Hi, I'm Jessica Patterson of Spinning Shadows Fiber Arts, and today I would like to share with you something that's very special to me, a story I've been working on for over 15 years, and have finally gotten to the point of writing it down. This story is created as, well, inspired by Tolkien, The Hobbit, and Chronicles of Narnia, set in a more modern day setting. It's fantasy, of course, and it is called The Guardian. This is the story of a young girl who finds herself thrown into a new world with centuries-old wars going on that she finds herself playing an integral role in as she discovers new abilities, new friends, and new family that help her along the way in an epic journey. I'm going to be reading the first chapter, A Voice in the Darkness. I hope here soon to have this book available as a physical novella. That's right, novella. It's 11 chapters long. It's not very long, but I hope to be able to write these short novellas and release them for you to enjoy. So here we go. Chapter 1, A Voice in the Darkness. How did it all begin? She said to a figure sitting with his back to hers in a shifting, shadowy landscape. Well, it started out as another day on the road for 18-year-old Jess Quill, who was traveling with her parents to pick up animals for their small farm. They were on their way back home and had only a few days left of the tedious journey. Jess sat in the back seat of the large white truck, watching endless pine trees march up the steep hills and mountains. Her mind wandered far away in some fantasy of flying over the trees to fight magical monsters and save the day, imaginings inspired by the plentiful variety of adventure novels and games lining the shelves of her bedroom at home. Jess couldn't wait to get back and delve into some new world waiting to be found in a recently purchased book, leaving behind a lonely life on a farm in the mountains. The day was saved, and the magic sword shone brightly in the setting sun. Jess smiled as her imaginary self held a glittering glass-like sword high in the twilight sky. The truck slowed as they turned in at the entrance of an old gas station with a rusted salmon pink shell sign above a faded tan stucco building advertising 99-cent burritos in the single large window. Her parents tended to the animals in the back of the pockmarked white trailer while Jess scurried to the station, pulling her long blonde hair into a haphazard ponytail. Thankful for the stop and focused on getting into the station, she barely noticed a white-haired young man in a black suit standing near one of the tables outside. He took a mild interest in her, having nothing else to do while he watched over a large black cargo van. It had Arctic Drift Research and Development stenciled in glittery blue-white on the side under a stylized snowflake. He took in the tall, wide-shouldered figure with a rounded face, high cheekbones, and deep blue eyes set in a faraway gaze. She was wearing an old blue t-shirt, faded jeans, and eye-popping, vividly colored tennis shoes. He guessed her age to be late teens to early 20s by her appearance. I know what my grandmother would say, he thought with a small, humorless smile. Tosh, there goes a daydreamer. Watch out for them. They need all the help they can get. After she went past the doors, Tosh resumed idly searching for the small bird that was chirping among the branches of the nearby pine trees. Several minutes later, Jess emerged from the station doors carrying a large paper bag filled with water bottles and snacks. Her head bobbed slightly as she hummed the tune playing over the tinny-sounding speakers lining the ceiling of the building. There was a distant, low rumble which filled the air. Both Tosh and Jess looked up instinctively for a thunderhead, only to find the sky clear blue with no clouds in sight. Jess assumed it was a jet breaking the sound barrier and continued on towards the edge of the parking lot where her parents were now parked. Tosh wondered what trouble his co-workers were getting into in the nearby foothills while tracking some strange energy reading. Halfway across the parking lot, Jess's mind was brought back to the present by something that hit the side of her head with a resounding whomp. She fell to her knees, vision swimming, and dropped her bag, sending water bottles skittering across the pavement. Tosh rushed over after seeing her fall, thinking she was hit by some rock kicked up by a passing car. "What happened?" he asked in concern as he held out his hand. "Are you all right?" Jess nodded dumbly, took the offered hand and got to her feet. She rubbed the developing knot on her head. "Yes, I'm fine, thank you." As she smoothed the side of her shirt, Jess noticed Tosh was quite a bit shorter than her. Though looking into his vivid ice blue eyes, she questioned the assumption that he was younger. There seemed to be a weight of years in his gaze which made her pause. Then embarrassment struck as Jess realized that she was standing there openly staring while her purchase lay simmering on the cement around them. Without a word, Tosh released her from his gaze and began to help pick up the scattered items. Jess picked up her bag and gratefully accepted his help. As she stepped away towards a water bottle, a glint caught her eye. Looking for the source, Jess spotted a blue-tinted oval crystal, the length of her thumb, with a tiny silver chain attached to the top laying on the ground. It seemed to glow with an inner light composed of a dizzying array of colors, which rapidly settled down to a vivid purple and sky blue, the two colors Jess loved dearly. She felt drawn to the necklace and picked it up with great care, as if it were the most delicate glass. Tosh glanced over from retrieving the furthest water bottle, and his eyes narrowed in puzzlement as he spotted the crystal in Jess's hand. To him there was more than a faint glow, but a dazzling radiance that filled the air and flowed around Jess like arcing solar flares. Then the brilliance vanished with a flash, like someone turned out the lights. Tosh blinked in confusion while his eyes readjusted. The world now looked strangely dull. He muttered inaudibly as Jess approached, hand held out for the last water bottle. Jess raised an eyebrow at him with a questioning gaze. Tosh handed her the bottle with a quick, disarming smile. "Nothing. Will you be all right?" "Yes. My parents' truck is just over there," she explained with a gesture towards the waiting vehicle. Safe travels then." He held up a hand in a weak wave as he hurriedly turned back to the table he had been standing by before. Jess smiled warmly. "Thank you," she called out before walking the rest of the way to her parents' truck. "With that, we headed home," said Jess to the figure sitting with his back to hers. They sat alone on a shapeless black stone in the midst of smoky, shifting darkness. Occasionally, a vivid streak of colored light would shine out, then fade back into the swirling smoke which reached no more than knee-height. The figure stirred, looking at her with quizzical green eyes while gesturing vaguely. "Your parents never noticed?" "They were busy talking about something," she shrugged with a half-hearted smile. "They didn't notice, and I didn't feel inclined to tell them that I just got knocked down by a necklace that mysteriously fell out of the sky." The figure laughed good-naturedly. "It didn't hurt that much, eh?" "No." She shared in the laugh for a moment, then gave a resigned sigh. Her eyes fell to her open palm as the memory of warmth from the crystal returned. A yellow gold light flickered in her hand for a moment, then it faded to a sad blue and went out. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly before looking at the figure with an apologetic smile. "I hope I'm not boring you with my story." He leaned into her back and chuckled. "Not at all. It's interesting to hear. Definitely more interesting than the so-called books I picked out. He held up 2 novels which looked to be science fiction from the spaceships shooting lasers at each other depicted on the cover. Jess looked at them with a raised eyebrow. I heard of that series. It's no good? The figure flung the books into the smoke with a casual flick of the wrist. They could be heard thudding into a solid floor some distance away. He smiled wryly. I've seen instruction manuals with more depth. I'm sorry, she said with a frown. You can't take them back to the library? Nah, the night staff isn't as friendly as my usual warden. He chuckled lightly and waved his hand. I'll get something new to read tomorrow. Oh, all right. She leaned back into him with a sigh. You sigh a lot. Sorry. You apologize a lot, too. Stop it. The figure jabbed her in the side lightly with a finger. Ow! Jess flinched and held up her hands in surrender. Okay, I'll try to stop. He smirked in triumph, crossing his arms. So that happened on Earth. How did you get to Chrysalis? She looked off into the smoky gloom for several minutes before replying. Her voice was quiet, barely above a mumble and filled with sadness. Well, it happened a few months later. And that was the first chapter of The Guardian. Thank you. Tales of the Solar Storm, Harvest Time. 24 young men and women stood at attention in front of their tents in the early glow of the autumn sun. Each was dressed in a white sleeveless shirt, olive green canvas pants with a small knife strapped to the belt, and heavy boots. Duncan marched along the line, inspecting them with a critical, coal-colored eyes and his characteristic scowl, his dark-tanned hands clasped behind his back. While the cadets were not much smaller than he was due to their extensive genetic treatments, his presence as their drill instructor from the beginning still demanded their respect. Do you call this a formation, cadets? Well, do you? He barked as he stormed back, causing them to straighten their stance as much as humanly possible. Today we will embark on a new mission. You will form into your teams and march across your designated fields. He pointed at the vast tended acres of fall vegetables. Once you reach your area of operation, you will proceed to extricate as many ripe pumpkins from the vines as possible. He spun as he reached the end and stood, continuing to talk at full volume. You will do so with extreme precision and care. If I find one bruised squash, you will lose the privilege of joining the High Templar on his turkey hunt. Do you understand? Sir, yes, sir, the cadets rang out in union. Now, Duncan walked to a position where he could look at all of them. You will stand at attention and wait for a speech from High Templar Leon. Leon, a man of short and wiry stature, with stark white hair and mustache, stepped from his small tent dressed in simple brown linen pants, white shirt, and leather sandals. The cadets found themselves staring at the leader they usually saw decked out in full armor, now appearing to be little more than a crazy old half-gnomish farmer in appearance. The High Templar walked to stand beside Duncan, who towered over him by a good 2 feet, and folded his hands behind his back. His sea-green eyes scanned the line briefly before he nodded in satisfaction. Cadets, he began in a crisp, even voice that caught their full attention, I brought you here today to help harvest these fields. We may be officially a military unit, but we are not above simple tasks. Part of your work done today and the coming days will go towards feeding us and the rest of the solar storm during the harvest celebration taking place in 1 week. Leon paused before continuing, looking over them with a touch of pride. Not one had stepped down from the offer to join him on this mundane mission. You've been training hard after your genetic treatments. Now you will exercise your teamwork and endurance, he grinned. You don't need me to tell you what to do. Now get out there and show me your best. The cadets saluted and shouted as one. Sir, yes, sir. Cadets, Duncan shouted, to your designated field. The 24 cadets broke into 6 groups and took off running down the beaten footpath. 4 of them, 3 boys and a stoutly built girl, sprinted for one of the farther fields containing medium-sized white and orange-striped pumpkins. "Carolyn, you're on cutting duty," said the tallest of the boys, who had close-cropped dark brown hair and hazel eyes. He turned to the other 2 boys and gestured as he spoke. "While she's cutting pumpkins, you 2 will work with me to haul them to the front of the field as quickly as possible. We'll start on this front corner and work our way towards the back before returning this way, taking the field one strip at a time." Carolyn took the small knife out of her belt after she retied her deep red hair into a tighter bun on the back of her head. She nodded with satisfaction as she adjusted her grip on the handle. "I'm ready." Tucker, a wiry boy with a mop of sandy brown-colored hair as long as he could get away with, grinned. "I bet we can get our field done before the other teams." He got a coy smirk. "That is, if Carolyn doesn't slip and nick herself." Carolyn shot Tucker a glare. "You'll want to eat dirt, Tuck?" Tucker held up his hands quickly in a gesture of peace. "Not today. I'm sure you'll do a great job." Connor scratched his chin. "We'll trade off cutting in shifts so no one slips up, all right?" Sykes, the smallest boy in comparison to the others, glanced at them with keen silver blue eyes and spoke in a subdued voice. "If the delinquent doesn't get himself punched, we should get started. The other teams are already harvesting." The other 3 looked to see that Sykes was right. Connor slapped his hands together. "All right, team, go and get those pumpkins." Farmers stood watching the effort of the teams from the hilltop, thankful for the immense, if a little unusual, help. Their wives and families began the process of weighing and sorting the squash for storage and cooking, while a small group tended to fixing dinner for everyone. Leon worked in a field alone, quiet with his thoughts and the task at hand. He felt a deep contentment as he easily lifted each pumpkin and set them in a growing heap by the well-trodden footpath. His nails and hands became increasingly dirt-stained as the day wore on, but he didn't care. Just like fall on the farm, Leon thought with a peaceful smile. The clear sunshine beat on his back, but to him it felt like a warm cushion. Quite a change from the skin-like electromesh that usually rested against his body, topped by cybernetic woven armor, electronics, and select pieces of refined plate. As the sky began to turn towards a brilliant fall sunset, he set the last red-orange pumpkin down and began a slow stroll down the lane, peering at the fields his cadets were still working on. He couldn't help but smile in satisfaction at seeing that Connor's team had moved on to another field after clearing theirs. He had high hopes for the team after seeing how well they worked together when they weren't fighting each other. Leon paused his walk and let loose a sharp whistle, 2 notes that caught the attention of all 6 teams, bringing them running after setting down the last pumpkins. Duncan came to stand beside Leon, his customary position, as the last stragglers came into line in front of the High Templar. All of them were bright-eyed, though a little sweat-stained from the long day of labor, broken only by a brief break for lunch. With a silent nod, he walked to the head of the line and continued on down the path. Duncan began barking orders at high volume, getting the cadets into a marching formation as quick as a flash behind Leon. He trotted up the line until he was marching alongside the first 2 cadets in formation. He began keeping the pace with an absurd ditty. Leon concealed his smile, holding up his head proudly as he led the troop to the table for dinner. Hi, I'm Jessica Patterson of Spinning Shadows Fiber Arts, and today I wanted to do something a little different. My husband and I actually are writers, and we published a book together called The Magic Realms Short Story Compendium. And I promised him a while ago that I would read one of our stories and record it. And, let's just say this is an early anniversary / Father's Day gift. So, happy Father's Day, honey. Here it is. This is A Wintry Retreat by T.D. Dragon. That is my husband's pen name. Ah, what a wonderful world. Only 10 below freezing, and it's summer during a heat wave. Crisp air and... Suddenly, the strange man, with somewhat unkempt hair peeking out from under his thick hood, paused as something caught his attention. Dave? He asked as he gestured with his ornate bronze cane, capped by a softball-sized ruby. An elf with gray-blue skin that was mostly hidden by his thick hood looked over as he adjusted the warmth spells on his gloves. Yes, Captain? There seems to be quite a few ice wisps gathering over there. Would you mind terribly checking the barrier wards over there? Okay, thanks. He grinned widely as he turned his attention towards other matters. No magic in making of the snow forts. Darien, snowports, that especially means you too. Oh, come on. What makes you think we would do anything beyond the rules of the contest? Yelled back a short woman with pale, somewhat doll-like features. Because, retorted Captain Zane, I could tell that Darien was working on crafting something over there behind the snowbank. What? Exclaimed a huge jet-black werewolf as he stood up. Not even if it's not directly for the fight? You know the rules. No trinkets, magic, runes, hexes, holy blessings, physical buffs, technological contraptions, power armor, weapons, explosives, giant magical snowplows, or anything that I might have missed. But why can't we wear our armor? Complained a 6-foot, 8-inch tall man with sandy brown hair and vivid teal-green eyes as he adjusted his coat. It's like part of us. Because, replied Zane with a smile, whether you are solar storm troopers who practically live in your armor or not, do you really want our dear warsmith to wear his armor that was probably customized to be able to throw massive amounts of snow around? A near maniacal cackle answered from nearby. Aye, that'd be the day. Give me the chance, yelled a thickly built dwarf with a stark red beard and mustache coming out from under his goggles. I'd show those dimpy cans of yours a thing or two. What if we used a Yeti? Blurted out a stunningly young-sounding voice for a human female who was over 6 feet tall.